Today on Locked On Canadiens, we look ahead to the future and hope that any new expansion team doesn't take any members of this core away. We discuss whether Patrik Laine can bring it back next season. And also, we would like everyone to stop trying to turn wingers into centers before the Canadiens have even solved that problem.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is Laura Sab, also known as the Active Stick. You might have seen my work on Habs Eyes on the Prize or Hockey Primetime that used to be on SiriusXM. And I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, whose work you will know from Rabbit Habs as well as the Build podcast. Ian, how are we doing on this sweltering, sweaty day?
We're almost through another week of summer hockeyless weeks, days, months. This is always the bad timeline for me when we get into the summer, and all that's left is really baseball. Or you'll turn on ESPN and they'll be doing something like the Ocho where they're playing fake sports all day, and it just kind of puts me in a foul mood to think about. So we're making our way through it. It'll be August soon. And then September after that, and hey, everybody starts showing up for training camp. So we just have to keep making it day by day. We hope we can play some small part in helping you guys get through that hockeyless time.
Absolutely. So on days like this, we're going to take the opportunity to tackle some mailbag questions that we've received in the past that we did not have enough space to do on our previous episodes. And speaking of that, we do want you all to send us your mailbag questions for tomorrow's episode. Otherwise, we will have nothing to talk about, literally. So send us your mailbag questions, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Hit us up on Blue Sky, hit us up on Instagram, hit us up on TikTok with your mailbag questions. Please, Locked On Canadiens on all of those platforms. And you can ask us anything. You can ask us hockey, Habs, trades, potentials, hypotheticals. You can ask us about food. You can ask us opinions on, pop culture, whatever it is. Send us your mailbag questions, please. All right. So today, our first segment is going to talk about who we would protect in a potential expansion draft. And then we are going to talk about whether Patrik Laine can come back and bring it back next season. And then maybe even stay with the Canadiens beyond that. And then finally, we're just going to, we want everyone to calm down and stop trying to get overly creative with center solutions until the Canadiens have actually had a chance to resolve that 2C question. Let's start with the expansion draft. So this one comes to us from one of the Roberts brothers, Jordan Roberts, who I feel we both feel is this is a very good question, a very astute and pointed question from Jordan Roberts. And the literal subject line of this email is Doomsday Prepper, which I thought was incredible. At the time I'm writing this, we have acquired Dobson and are still making our way through day two of the draft. As per usual, I am loving the decisions the management team are making and have been getting excited about the future of our organization until I had the realization that all the insiders always tease a 34-team expansion. If that were to happen this weekend and they kept the same format from the Seattle expansion, which is 8 skaters and a goalie, or 7 forwards, 3 defense, and a goalie, who would you be willing to leave exposed, and are you betting your marbles on Fowler or sticking with the hometown kid? Right. So Ian wanted to do this as if, all of those rumors are true and that in the next 3 to 4 years, we are getting 2 expansion teams in the NHL. So Ian, but we are assuming the same rules. So
yeah.
Yes. So who are we protecting on this team?
Yeah, so if we're going by the rules that I can't remember if this was the case for Vegas, I think it was, but it was definitely the case for Seattle, where you had essentially 2 different models of protection you could use. You could do 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or 8 skaters and a goalie. So if you have more defensemen that you would like to keep than 3, you can use that, but as in turn, you have to expose more forwards in doing so. For me, just crystal ball looking at the next few years, 3-4 years down the line is probably what we'd be looking at, right now if expansion talks had started, which to the NHL's credit, they've said that they haven't. There's conversations that have taken place. They have not approved any new expansion, but we know Atlanta is cooking something up. We know Houston wants to get into that market. We know Arizona is going to try again. We'll see how far they get this time. For me, looking at this moving forward, I think that the most reasonable solution is the 8 skaters and a goalie, because the Canadiens have their top 4 defense cooked. If this plan works the way it ought to, in 3 or 4 years, their top 4 defense will be Hudson, Gooley, Dobson, Reinbacher. Those guys are all being kept. I would not mess around trying to figure out how to save one of those so that a lower of the lineup forward can be kept. So with that said, I keep those 4 at forward: Suzuki, Caufield, Slafkovsky, Demidov. Those are my 4 at forward being kept. That means you're exposing, if he's in the NHL at that point, Michael Hage, which is unfortunate. But if we also have to keep into consideration that first and second year players are not eligible to be selected, so you don't have to protect them. They're just not eligible for expansion drafts. It means that potentially Zachary Bolduc would be exposed in that in that exercise. It means if Kirby Dach hits, Kirby Dach is exposed in that exercise. Kirby Dach is interesting because he's sort of a linchpin in that. If he ends up being a number 2 center, it becomes kind of complicated for the Canadiens to keep all of those guys. So
yeah, and then Gooley gets sacrificed in my mind in that.
Or you end up in side
Reinbacher
deal
doesn't
category. You end up doing what a lot of teams did during the Vegas expansion, which was we'll throw you a first round pick so you don't select the guy that we want to take, that we want to keep.
Or we'll give you this other guy that you might want.
Which for Vegas, like, they feasted on that mentality, right? And then by the time Seattle came around, Seattle tried, but they very much overplayed their hand, and everyone was like, "Fine, just take the guys. We don't really care." This is another aspect of this. Jordan, I understand why you're nervous. Expansion makes people nervous. Everybody is going to lose somebody. It is just the way of the world, unfortunately. Laura, what did you think about that? And I have Fowler being kept at that point because I don't think Montembeault will be around. Fowler's the guy that you would want to keep in net. So I went with the 8 skater and one goalie approach.
Yeah, and me too. Unless like the big if is if Reinbacher doesn't hit. In that case, like if he's just not good, right? We don't know. He looks as advertised at the moment. He appears to be, right? But after a couple of years in the NHL, if he's not what we thought, then I think then it's Reinbacher, right? That makes sense. And so, in that scenario, if you're okay with him going, or if you have some intel that says these 2 teams are taking other defensemen from other teams that they're happy with, then you can expose one of those, and then you can go the other route and keep more of your forwards, because you're going to have your Michael Hage or your Kirby Dach or your Bolduc or even your Kyrou, depending on how that shakes out.
That's a great point. It's something I did consider, right? If they get a guy like that, it kind of makes this expansion exercise pretty difficult for Montreal. Like, they would have to swing a side deal to make all of that fit. So I don't think that teams should be planning for expansion right now. I think that's a waste of their time. Their goal should be to make a team that can win a Stanley Cup. And, that's what the Canadiens' goal is. They don't know where these expansion teams are going to be, even if they ever happen. So they shouldn't be planning for these right now. But it's a good thought exercise, right? To go through and figure out who is truly part of the core of this team. And I think we've kind of distilled this list down to those guys.
Yes. And here's another question. In the expansion draft, can we protect Jeff Gorton?
Yeah. Well, they start to take executors through some loophole in the rules. It's funny. Like, I know you can't do that. I know you can't just claim executives, but it would be kind of funny if you could, just seeing like general managers get plucked away from teams. Like that would be pretty. You have to use an expansion protection slot to like keep Bill Zito in Florida, which is very funny.
I was literally about to say, Bill Zito, you're up next, and that was the what I want to end the segment with. For Jordan Roberts, yes, we were all nervous, but think about it this way. A team like Florida is also going to lose a guy, right? Like you see that incredible depth. Someone's going to mess with that chemistry. And so, we do have, we do have things to look forward to. And I think the best thing the Canadians can do is just like be really good at deal making. And then at that time when it comes, like give them a deal that won't interrupt this core, because I know exactly what you're thinking, Jordan. This is going to be when the Canadians start to contend, and then all of a sudden, like a wrench is going to be thrown into that by these two new teams. I'm not too worried about it, but I really like this exercise. I really like the way that our listeners think. I love these questions, and we've got another great question coming up next regarding Patrik Laine. Should he come back? Will he come back? Should the Canadians keep him? Will they keep him? And all of that coming up next. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So, in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. One thing that I noticed when I started using Monarch Money and I started tracking my spending was that my little treat culture was getting out of hand. Every day I would have a little bit of a treat, and then it would, somehow I would end up bleeding money. So, Monarch Money really put that into perspective for me. And now I'm a lot smarter and I space out my treats. I don't have to deprive myself, but Monarch Money gives me the perspective to really rein it in. And you can take control over your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right. So this has been kind of a topic that's been going around a little bit. We did get a listener question about it a couple weeks ago, but lately people, including ourselves, we were kind of speculating that, the Canadians would not keep Patrik Laine beyond this year. In fact, they would be likely to trade him at the trade deadline if there was a situation that made sense for him. But there's, there was a question, actually, I think I saw it on social media saying like, well, what makes us so sure that's happening? And then this was about a week and a half ago, our good friend Claude Sauvé, who sends us wonderful mailbag questions, he brought up a question about Patrik Laine that I really want to tackle in this segment. Hi guys. When Patrik Laine was acquired by the Canadiens, a lot of the scouting reports were negative. Understandably so, as a result of his time spent in the player assistance program. With that in mind, I don't feel people are giving enough credit to both the organization and Patrik Laine for how far he has come since. Imagine climbing out of a hole and somebody metaphorically and literally takes the legs right out from under you. Yet he came back again and contributed to the team's success. Most fans are preoccupied with numbers, and I'm one of them. But in witnessing the character he displayed over the last year, I'm hopeful that management does not give up on him. If he takes the necessary steps to move forward as he did in the past, it's not unrealistic to think he may be able to come close to the more rounded player he was in Columbus when he was a point-a-game player. If so, I can get back to lauding his numbers again, which is way more fun than dabbling in psychology. Are you guys as hopeful as I am, or do you still think he's a lost cause? Now, for those of you who are new to the show, my co-host is a big fan of Patrik Laine. Patrik Laine is his guy. In fact, I credit my co-host with Patrik Laine being traded to Montreal. And so I'm going to give him the floor first, and then I'm gonna maybe kind of I don't think we're gonna have opposing views on this, but maybe I'll like dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna have to recuse myself because he is my guy, right? I thought
No,
I'd
no,
have
no,
to like
no.
step away and be like, I can't give this answer impartially. Although I figure Claude is a longtime listener of the show, he knows I can't give this answer impartially, and he maybe didn't want me to. Look, I find it interesting that in a sport like hockey, where we love the redemption narrative, we love it so much that we give it to guys most of the time who don't deserve it or who are being redeemed from something that they did to themselves in a very negative sense, or they caused harm to others. Patrik Laine, I find that he came back from multiple injuries. He came back from mental health issues that he has dealt with and been very forthright and public about them. I talk about it all the time, that his line when he came back to, to playing for the Canadiens again this year, and he talked to his therapist and said, he was nervous going into that first game back, and his therapist told him, everything to this, putting on that sweater is an achievement of everything that came before this, and everything that comes after is a plus. And it really, like, it's a great mindset to go about your everyday, whether you're an athlete like Patrik Laine or just some idiot like me. I think that we all have a bit of recency bias with this player, in that we are watching him, we are thinking of him as he ended last season, which was a season in which started with him having his knee blown out and having to recover from that, and then getting in and playing fantastic hockey for the Canadiens. Was he a perfect player? No, but he did exactly what they needed him to do, hammer the puck into the net. And then he broke his finger, and that becomes very hard to do. Due to the nature of his injury and the other flaws that he had, he became a one-dimensional player towards the end of the run. And because of the secondary injury, the one to his hand, that one dimension was taken away from him. I think that with a summer of rehabbing all of these injuries and a summer of just not thinking about what's coming next, he knows where he's playing next year, which is, he wasn't able to say that last summer coming into the, to Montreal. So I just think that with the right summer, we can see this player return more to the form that we kind of anticipated him being. If he is a power play specialist who buries 30 to 35 goals a year, he doesn't play all of the games because he does have an injury history. I have no problem with this player. Like, I think a lot of the people who are drawing issues with this player are very much motivated by what happened last year and watching him try to skate on a knee that was just not there. Like, I don't know how else we can frame this to be anything other than he was playing on one leg the entire year and was still third in the National Hockey League in power play goals. Like, if I cannot reach you with that, I don't know that there's anything that will reach you. I will also go back to something really quickly that I said, very early on with Patrik Laine, when he, right before they played Columbus for the first time, and he said all those things, about the room in Columbus. After that moment, your opinion on Patrik Laine did not change. You thought about him what you thought about him. And I think that's still true to a certain extent with a lot of people who watch this player. There's nothing that he's going to be able to do that will redeem him in their eyes. Like, this is just the kind of guy that he is. It's kind of why I love him. Like, he does not care what you think about him in any way, shape, or form. And we could all afford to have a little bit of that in our lives. I've rambled a lot here, but I think my point here is, yes, there's room for him on this team should he return to the form that we think he can be. Yeah. The same can be said about Kirby Dach, right? There's room for him if he can be the Kirby Dach we hope he can be.
Exactly. And I think, like, this is the thing. I feel like you did a really good job of kind of talking about that without being too much of a homer, which I appreciate. I think one thing that we constantly forget is that this is a 27-year-old man, not a 33-year-old man, right? And that is a huge difference, right? And so he's still really young, and this is the year, like, and this kind of sucks. Like, these are the years that would be considered his prime, which the last couple of years have been decimated by injury and obviously the mental health and all of that, right? Like, it's just been derailed. So, if the Canadiens and Patrik Laine together are able to orchestrate conditions such that he is healthy, I think that there is absolutely no reason he can't go back to what made him the second overall pick in a year when, if Austin Matthews did not exist, and Austin Matthews is far and away like one of the elite superstars of the game, right? If he did not exist, Patrik Laine would have been hands down the first overall pick, right? And so I personally think that it's up to the Canadiens and it's up to Patrik Laine, but I have not given up on him. And I do agree with you that most of the time it's somebody who's made up their mind, right? Like, they don't like Patrik Laine, and there's nothing that Patrik Laine is going to do that's going to change their mind, or the Habs. But I think that there's a large number of Montreal Canadiens fans that are rooting for this guy, if nothing but, like, if for nothing but the logo on the front of his jersey, right? Like, they just want a Montreal Canadien to succeed. And so I think that Patrik Laine has done a really good job, and I know people will disagree. I think he's done a really good job of becoming a Montreal Canadian, right? Like and I think the situation here, like he and his wife seem happy here. The Montreal Canadiens seem to love him. He and Marty seem to get along. I think the situation is good. So if it continues that way, there is no reason to think that Patrik Laine does not regain some form. I maybe not, like his first couple of years here form, but some form, because again, those injuries, like they stay with you forever, even if you do recover. And I think, the Canadiens will make room for him, even if he's not in their plans today. Like if he does the 30 to 35 goals that you're talking about next year, they will find room for him.
Yeah.
Right. I think also a lot of, and we have to wrap this up, but I think a lot of the talk is also because like, why are they trying to get Kyrou if, right? That means like Patrik Laine is on his way out. Like they're
Yeah,
trying,
yeah, I
and
completely agree. Like if that's the move they're going, and then it makes Laine, it puts him on the outside of that top 6 looking in, right?
yeah,
So like he's a good option to have because you have an option for that at least for next year. But if you can get a Kyrou, that kind of moves Patty out of that conversation, unfortunately.
absolutely. And I think, Claude Sauvé, thank you so much for all of your mailbag questions. We love them. But we do have to move on. And this one is not a mailbag question. We're just kind of like a little bit concerned about how everyone just suddenly seems to think all the wingers can be centers. And we'll get into that right up next. All right. So I think that we are getting a little bit overly stressed about who the Montreal Canadiens are going to play in that second line center position next season. I feel like I know it's quiet, it's July. There's not a whole lot going on, and we need to distract ourselves from the endless rumors about the Montreal Canadiens being interested in Kyrou or trying to make that happen. And all of a sudden, we're penciling in wingers as centers. What are your thoughts on this, Ian?
Yeah, this was sparked by a few things. One being, there's a report out there that Mark Bureau, the Canadiens' chief face-off specialist, is working with Zachary Bolduc to perfect his ability at the draw. He's not a natural center, and he might have been in junior, but not at the NHL level, which is obviously a very different beast. And I've seen a lot of thoughts floating around there from writers and fans alike that maybe Ivan Demidov is that solution at center on the second line. And this comparison isn't perfect, but stick with me. Does this not feel like Jonathan Drouin all over again? And that they acquire a guy and they go, he's gonna be a center. We see him as a center, even though nobody else did. I just think that it is not worth a lot of our time and effort going into these conversations. Maybe the Bolduc one is a little different because if he can play third line center, I'm cool with that. Right? Like that's a far less stressful role for that player to come in and try to play than rather between Laine and Demidov on the second line. That's a different thing entirely. But sticking with the Demidov playing center part of this, I don't think that there's any evidence for that being a logical thought. He didn't play center in the KHL. He was not drafted as a center. He was drafted as a winger. And a lot of people just look at him and I think are square peg round holing this and saying, well, the Canadiens need a center. Maybe he can do it. And that I feel like the first thing with Ivan Demidov needs to be making him into a threat top 6 forward. Not necessarily, and also we're adding you in this much more demanding position to do it, right? Like that seems like too much.
It does. And here's the thing too, is that, even, and again, the person who reported this did not say anything about center. He was just, talking about
Sure.
the face-offs, right? Like with Bolduc, like we didn't love his face-off stats. So, he has to improve them anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is
He didn't take a lot of draws last year.
Yeah. So this is just the Montreal Canadiens just helping a guy with a skill, right? That's how I'm seeing this. They're taking a skill that needs improvement and they're having a guy help you with it. That's it.
Yeah.
But the Ivan Demidov one kind of really bothers me. Just because somebody's talented doesn't mean they can do anything, right? And why are you like hindering this person's growth. Like that's the part that bothers me. Just let him be. Find the right center for him, and the Montreal Canadiens will do what it takes. Like I believe that this team will do whatever it takes. If they get close to contending and they don't have that guy to play with Demidov and whoever is on the other side of that line, they're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to give up a fortune for the right guy. Like when it's time to contend, and we're not there yet. So I think we all need to kind of calm down, right? And I, there's nothing wrong with the Montreal Canadiens experimenting in the absence of a trade. There's nothing wrong with them experimenting with the guys they already have. And, you never know what might come out of that. Something brilliant might. But I just feel like we all just need to take a step back and breathe and let the Montreal Canadiens worry about the second line center position and not try to solve it in our own heads.
I think all of this, first of all, you're right. Like, I think all of that's spot on. I think all of this stems from a market that has entirely lost faith in Kirby Dach, which I think to a certain extent is unfair.
Yeah.
I think it's unfair.
Premature.
It's premature at the very least. That's the perfect word to use. It's premature. Yes, we saw last year it didn't go as we all had anticipated. He has yet to play a full NHL campaign. Like he's dealt with some very significant injuries. Last year he was not playing at 100%. He was trying to get back up to speed and he struggled with it. Admittedly, I think the Canadiens were not thrilled with the camp that he had, with the way that he approached his rehab over the summer. That seems to have completely changed. He's in Montreal. He's been skating. Jeff Gorton at the draft media availability said he's ahead of schedule. He wouldn't commit to whether or not he's going to be ready for the training camp in the regular season, but for him to be ahead of schedule at this point is a pretty good sign, considering when the Canadiens posted or told us about his injury, they said that he would be ready for the start of next year. So that's good. At this point, if I had to if I had to make a call on what I think the Canadiens are doing, I think they're running it back with Kirby Dach down the middle on the second line. And I don't even necessarily think that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
At least early on, think of it just like, and I mean, it's higher stakes than Barron, but think of it like Justin Barron in that they're going to get that information in the first couple weeks, first couple months of the season. And then they're going to decide what they want to do. And if Kirby Dach shows up and balls out and we are thrilled with the summer that he had and the player that he's become, we're not having this conversation anymore. Yeah. Like it's over. And you go from, Suzuki to Dach to somebody who they still need to replace as Christian Dvorak and then Jake Evans.
Yeah.
So that's a good situation to be in if Dach can return to form. It's premature to count him out, but it's also premature to say that he's going to be able to do it. We just don't know. And the unknowing is the hardest part right now.
Exactly. And because there's nothing else going on in the summer, like our imaginations are running wild. All right. We've got a couple of things. First of all, do not forget your mailbag questions for tomorrow. Otherwise, we will have no episode. You can send them to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com or hit us up on social media. Locked On Canadiens everywhere. Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, also in the YouTube comments. Next, we have a YouTube subscriber contest that we are running. And what you can win is one of Ian's prized possessions, actually one of two of Ian's prized possessions. One is a beautiful picture of Josh Anderson that is signed. And the other one is a majestic picture of Arbor Zachary that is also signed. And Ian will send you his precious possessions if you win our contest. What you have to do is you have to be subscribed to our podcast on YouTube. And then you can leave a comment saying contest entry. In the comments. We are almost there. Once we get to 4,500, Josh Anderson is going to be auctioned off, and then not auctioned off, drawn for. And then once we get to 5,000, Arbor Zachary is going to be sent to a lovely home. And all you got to do is put the comment once. You don't have to do multiple times. We are keeping track of all of them, and we will make a draw. We will do a draw, not make a draw. Do a draw. Once we hit 4,500 and 5,000. All right. It is now also time for our trivia.
It is. Yesterday's question was regarding goal scoring across the league, or, when the last time the Montreal Canadiens led the regular season in total goals scored. Do you know the answer to this one, Laura? I believe you gave it to me first guess, no issue,
yes.
when we stopped recording.
It was in 2008.
Yes, the 07-08 Montreal Canadiens, they led the league in goal scoring, 262 goals. They beat Ottawa by 1. They beat the Ottawa Senators by 1 goal. And that 1 goal, by the way, came in the final regular season game against Ottawa. It was Chris Higgins who put the Montreal Canadiens over the Ottawa Senators. No one had that one yesterday. A lot of guesses back in the 70s, but it wasn't that far back. Montreal, within the last 20 years, has led the National Hockey League in goals. Maybe we're not so far away from them doing that again. All right, today's question. Former Hamilton Bulldog Nick Tarnasky is in the news after getting in a fight with a drunken golfer out on the course. If you haven't seen the video, it's great form. He's grabbing the shirt, he's throwing punches, he hucks the guy into the water a couple times. It's really, truly an excellent, show of force out in public. His last NHL goal came on February 3rd, 2010 against the Boston Bruins while he was a member of the Florida Panthers, which former Montreal Canadian also scored in that game. So the last time Nick Tarnasky scored an NHL goal, a former Montreal Canadian also scored in that game. If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below. Send it to us any way you know how, and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode of the show.
Can we have the year again?
It was February 3rd, 2010.
Awesome. All right. You heard the man. You can participate in trivia as well. Just leave the responses in the YouTube comments. You can email them to us at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. You can send us a reply on Blue Sky or DM us on Blue Sky with the answer. Again, it's Locked On Canadians. You can also DM us on Instagram, Locked On Canadians, and you can DM us or leave a comment on TikTok. Again, Locked On Canadians. That's where you will find us. Also, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. Do not forget our contest. You will find my co-host on social media at Baby Athene. You will find me at The Active Stick. We want to thank you all for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with a mailbag.